Hello, Danny.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
I've
How's-
got uh, I've got Robbie sitting in with me today.
oh, good.
Sitting over
I
to
don't
the
know
side.
that I don't think I've ever met Robbie. So
Yes.
nice,
So,
nice to
hang
meet you.
on a second. I'll see if I can get working at least see what he looks like anyway. So let's see if I'm smart enough to make this work. Uh hi.
Ah, the infamous
Hey
Robbie.
Robbie to the side there. uh
Heard the name many times, but I'm like, he's always out in the field. I don't know. I've never met Robbie.
yeah, he stays out. I thought this is a really good topic for him today. So
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'm hoping Rich is going to show up because we're talking about the same thing for his business. So it's a good topic for him as well. A lot good topic for a lot of people. It's a
well, I step to the coffee pot. I'll be right back.
yep, I get it. Yep. I see we've got iPhone 4 is joined. Who is that?
Yeah, that's me, Victor Valera.
Victor, how you doing?
Good, good.
So you're out in California? What are you doing out there?
Well, yes, sir. Yeah, we're building a plant.
Building a what?
Plant.
Ah, you're breaking up a little bit. I still didn't hear you. Okay, we're waiting on Danny to get in, and we'll go ahead and start. I'm sure we'll have a couple others join in, but we'll wait. Danny's just getting some coffee so he can focus on the meeting. So as soon as he gets back. So you've been busy, Victor. I see a lot of posts online. Hey, Danny.
I'm back.
Okay, I'll go ahead and get started. iPhone 4 is Victor Valera. So
Okay.
he's joining us in from California. So he's a trooper on this one. So there's Rich Valandry. So everybody should have gotten the email. You should have received an attachment with the job description of project manager. Did everyone receive that? You got it, Danny. Victor, did you receive that email? I think I got everybody on it. So okay, good. If anybody needs a copy, just let me know. I'll share that with you. Obviously, um, I want everybody to have that information and to have a good idea of what that role entails. Uh, I just for everybody's information, what I did kind of joining in with the new technology in this world is I took a bunch of information I had on the role of project manager and I ran that through AI and asked it to clean it up and create a good job description for a residential project manager. Then I did some editing after that, but that's what I came up with. The next step is going to be, I haven't done it yet, is to create a performance review using that same AI technology. Take the job description, put it back in, and say create a performance review based on this. And that document will produce, and I can edit it from there. So, just a little side note on there on how you can use AI in your business and creating some of these documents. We all have a bunch of stuff out there, but AI can really help us clean it up and bring multiple documents together. I wanted to get into project management today because for me, it just sticks in my head because the last time I hired a project manager in my business, I just remember sitting there. I was doing a flip on a house. I had moved my desk out to the job site and I was going nuts. I had multiple jobs going in the company besides this flip. I moved out to the flip so I could oversee the construction because we were getting stretched. I had so much work going on. I was like, I can't sit in my office anymore. I got to get out there where the work is. The phones were ringing, the clients were calling. I'm trying to line up subs. People are asking me questions all day long. My head was literally about ready to explode. I was like, something has got to give. The business was growing. I had plenty of work. And I was like, I need to take a serious next step or this whole thing is just going to implode on me. And it was at that point in that company that I turned around and said, I have got to find a project manager. And I had Chad in the field. Chad was running a lot of my job sites, both as a, kind of a working super role. So I had the field mostly covered. I had gone out to the flip because we were that stretched. But then I was completely stretched trying to do the project manager role. And I grew up in the commercial world. That's where I really got my feet wet in construction. Been in construction my whole life, but really as a business, I started it out in the commercial world. And in the commercial world, projects are run by PMs. The owners of the company are rarely involved. The estimating team is not involved at all. They hand you off the project and say, go build it. You've got a field superintendent and you've got a project manager, maybe an assistant project manager, and maybe even assistant field superintendents out in the field. But that's the team. That's who builds these projects. And so I saw project management run purely as a company function. It wasn't something that the owners did. It was, their role was to sign up the contracts, make sure it was all legally binding, do all that great stuff, get the insurances in place, and then they handed it off to a project team to get it built. And a lot of people just haven't seen that role. It's our role as small business owners, as people running our own businesses, and essentially being a one-man show. We start out with tool belt on. Eventually we get off the tool belt, and then we're running around doing sales, estimating, accounting, project management, taking care of the clients, signing up the subs, overseeing the field operations. We really don't get a chance to see project management as a completely separate role in the company. But it is one of the roles, like I said, when I was doing that flip, it was one of the roles that literally allowed me to take a deep breath and then really focus on the growth of the company. Now, I did it. Honestly, I was a little tight on cash at that point. I had a lot of jobs, but you understand, you can have jobs, but you may not have cash. I was tight on cash. And I really didn't know if this was a full-time role for the company yet. So I found someone who was willing to do it on a part-time basis. And in a lot of respects, project management can be done at almost any hour of the day. If you're writing up scopes of work for subcontractors, you can do that at 8:00 at night after dinner if you choose to. Or, in my case, I hired a woman to do this role. She would drop her kids off at school and then she would hit the phones, which was fine. It really didn't matter to me when the work got done. It was a pure office role. I just needed the work done. And it was a good way to bring or to cover that role kind of on a part-time basis. Eventually she became full-time. And I say eventually, that was probably within a few months. It allowed me to sign up more work. I was more able to focus on the sales, to spend time with the customers on the front end sales and bring in more work. And then boom, in no time, she was full time. So it really opened up my day and opened up what I could focus on. And in this case, it was sales. Now, had I continued on, my next role to fill would have been that sales role or at least part-time. And I say that because my project manager did start to step into that role as she learned more about construction, learned how to deal with the clients, and understood the process of construction. If I got super busy, she would actually go out and take on some of my sales calls. So she ended up with a dual role. Now, fortunately, she had a background in sales. So she had been trained in sales years ago, you know, back in the day kind of thing. She worked for Yellow Book, selling ads for Yellow Book, but she knew sales, which helped me a bit. But she also learned about construction. She knew clients' homes, and she was able to help me out in that sales role up to the point where she actually started taking jobs, working with the field team, pricing up the work, handing me the pricing for review. We would go over it in detail and then go ahead and write up a contract, and she would run with it from there. I had very little interaction with the client. Again, this was a huge eye opener for me. This was one of the first times where I was not the forefront person in my business, handling all the sales, dealing with the clients right up front on a one-to-one basis. My project manager had done that. My field team had done that, and they would build the job. And lo and behold, the money came in and the client was happy, which is really what I wanted. And it changed my entire perspective on the business at that point, because I was still convinced I had to be there. They were hiring me. This was the point where I began to realize and began to fully understand that they just wanted a new kitchen, a new house. They just wanted, a deck, whatever it was I was building for. They wanted the outcome. It was my ego that was saying that they wanted to hire me. They really didn't care. If I got to snap my fingers and they ended up with a brand new deck, they would have been perfectly happy with that. So it wasn't about me. Getting past that hurdle allowed me then to grow the company, because it was about the business then. So I say all of that to say hiring a project manager really helped me transform the business. Now, I really wanted to talk about what that project manager does, because a lot of what that PM does is what, quote unquote, we do. Like, we handle a lot of this. We don't even realize it as in our day-to-day goings on running a job, that we are handling a specific role in the industry. The primary role of the project manager is, if you wanted to boil it down to one thing, they manage contracts. They manage the subcontracts. They write up the scope of work. They make sure that subcontract is within budget and within scope. Now, the scope, I don't care how much experience you have, it's always a good idea to review that with the field team. If you've got a dedicated field superintendent out on the site doing the work, eyes on every day, you want to run that scope of work by them and go, did I cover everything? Is this the way you wanted to build it? A good example for me is up here in the Northeast, we've got a lot of boilers. Well, who's got the boiler in the contract? Is that an HVAC role or is that a plumbing role? The field superintendent may have an opinion on that based on the progress of the work and how he wants to execute it. So he may say, I want that with the plumber, because I want him, I want that to be part of the, I don't know, the radiant heating system, so that the boiler needs to be, it's more of a plumbing role in this case than it is an HVAC role. Okay, fine. I'll make sure I buy out the boiler work with the plumber. But I'm going to coordinate that with the field, make sure they're on board with that scope of work, and then that pricing matches the budget. From there, I'm going to track all the payments with that subcontractor, make sure their insurance is in place, and make sure they're getting paid on time as the work progresses. Again, checking with the field. Sub just billed me 60% complete. Is that correct? If I don't know, I'll make a quick call out to the field and go, Bob's billing us for 60%. Are we okay with that? And then take it from there. The other main contract is the client contract. The PM is managing that relationship, that agreement. So they're handling all of the client change orders, coordinating with the subcontractors on the pricing of those change orders, getting them submitted, helping the clients with their selections, which is one reason I always liked having a woman in that project management role. They're very patient. They're very understanding about working with those selections, because 9 times out of 10, the client is a woman. It's just the nature of what I've seen in the industry. We can hire people all day long. We end up working most of the time with the wives on the selections in the project. And having a woman project manager working with women, they kind of get it. I always just want to know what the color was. You know, a lot of times it was, it's got to match the color of my daughter's duvet. I didn't care. I just wanted a paint color number so I could get some paint on the walls. I wasn't patient that way. So I found women work very well in that role, especially in residential. They do a great job in commercial too, but it's an interesting role for women in the industry in that project management role. So they're handling all of those relationships. They're getting those selections made. They're making sure the subcontractors know what those selections are, or, you know, like in the case of appliances, you know, the owner selects the appliances, as the project manager then is in charge of making sure those appliances are ordered, deposits are put out there, and that they're going to be delivered to the job site on schedule when the superintendent needs them. They're not going to come in early and the super has to sit there and figure out, okay, now what am I going to do with all these boxes? They're just in my way. Or I need appliances next week. And you're going, well, I haven't bought any. You won't have any appliances for 2 months. Well, it's a job killer. So the project manager is looking, I like to say the superintendent's looking 3 weeks down the road. Everything they do is kind of in that 3-week envelope. What am I going to do in the next 3 weeks? Their view of the job is pretty narrow from a scheduling standpoint. The project manager is typically looking on a larger project I'm talking about, but they're looking like 3 months down the road. They're looking at, I've got to get selections for interior doors and hardware because I know I'm going to have a 6-week lead time on those. I'm going to have shop drawings. The owner's going to spend a ton of time at the hardware store trying to pick out hinges of all things, and it's going to get delayed by 2 weeks. I've got to start working on that months in advance. So when the field says, hey, we're installing doors next week, I go, yeah, perfect, because they're being delivered to you on Friday. Done. The job keeps progressing. So you've got a separate set of eyes in a project management role that's looking way down the road and trying to, you know, plan the job for the client, for the field, to keep it going. Now, the other weird thing about the project manager, because they're looking 3 months down the road, they kind of are the leader of the project, but only because of that time frame aspect. The role is a peer relationship between the office and the field. They are, you know, if you did an org chart, field superintendent and project manager are at an equal level. The superintendent's not reporting to the PM's not reporting to the super. They are equal. They're both in charge of getting the job built. The superintendent's doing it in the field. Their focus is schedule and quality. Get the job done, get it done right. The man or woman in the office, their focus is on the contracts, the budgets, the insurance, kind of all. It's a paperwork job. So, but the focus is still to get the job done. It's just in a different way. The project manager is going to build it in paper. Superintendent's going to build it in the field in real life. So it's an equal role. One isn't above the other. One doesn't report to the other. And it's good for everybody to understand that, because it's got to be a team effort in the decision-making process. A lot of times you got to both put your heads together and say, how are we going to do this? It is a team effort. It's not, I want it done this way. That will never get anybody anyway. The PM may have certain reasons why that's never going to work. It may be a lead time issue that they know about. Or if the PM says, I want it done this way, the superintendent in the field may go, yeah, that's never going to happen because we can't get to that location at that time in the job, whatever the situation may be. So it is a team effort. It's a peer relationship between the superintendent and the project manager. But that project manager role, once you start handing that off, it changes your day drastically. You begin to realize how much time you were spending on the phone with the subs, buying appliances, running out, meeting with the clients on the town. Now, we all know we spend a lot of time doing that. But when you take it completely off your schedule and you put it on somebody else's responsibility, I literally sat there and was like, well, what am I going to do today? Like, I don't have anything to do, because I really hadn't yet focused on my efforts are in sales and marketing. I was just stunned for the first month or so going, I don't have anything to do. Like I should be doing all of that. Now, eventually the sales and marketing picked up. I focused on that and I was able to bring more work in and it all worked out great. But the other role that I had to do was I was no longer managing projects. I was now a step back from the projects. I would touch base with the clients to go, hey, how's it going? Everything okay? You happy? That kind of stuff. And I actually tried to stay out of that for the most part because I didn't want to interfere. But my role now had shifted to managing people, not projects. So once a week, I would sit down with my project manager and go over every job. What's coming up? Where are we on billing? Where are we on change orders? What major issues do we have? What's the temperature of the client? And would it help if I got involved? Now, sometimes the client was getting edgy, but the PM could handle it. Sometimes the PM was reaching their edge with the edgy client and said, you know what? I think they need to hear from you. Fine, I'll give them a call. But I had that once a week touch point where I went over all the aspects of the job with the PM, kind of bring me up to speed. Also saying, where can I help you? Are you having a problem with a sub? Do you need me to jump in? Do you have a question on any pricing, any issues? Is there any kind of conflicts between the field and the office that, I can assist with? I didn't offer to step in and start fixing things. I made myself available if I could help in any way. The last thing I wanted to do in that meeting was come out with a list of 20 things to do. The idea wasn't to take things off of the PM's plate or off the superintendent's plate or start meeting clients to start shopping for ceramic tile. I was not looking to do that. Now, if everybody was backed up and I needed to step in, I could. But that my objective was to be available and to make myself available to understand the project well enough that I could engage. And when I went to the field, I would understand what was going on. It wasn't going to be a surprise to me. I knew what stage we were on the project. I knew what was going on. I could show up. I also had enough of a touch point on the project, though, even though I wasn't day-to-day involved anymore. If I did have a phone call with the client, I knew where the job was. I wasn't, completely divorced from it and had no idea what was going on. I could still engage with the client. We could talk about details. And my overall objective in that conversation, to be honest with you, at that point was collect information and say, I'll have the PM or I'll have the superintendent or we'll reach out to the subcontractor or the supplier on that. The objective was always kind of to deflect it off my desk. Let the people I had hired to do the role step in and do the job that I had hired them to do, not to continually suck it back onto my plate, which was very tempting. Because I've been in project management my entire career. So, in the back of my head, I'm going, I know how to do this. I could grab it in a minute and get it done. It wasn't going to help them. It wasn't going to help me. It wasn't going to help the company grow. So that's my very long spiel on project management. Normally I go a little bit shorter, but I want to take a little more time on this one because I do think it's a really important role. I don't necessarily consider it to be your first hire. Probably in the global picture of things, probably your third hire. I like to start off with maybe a bookkeeper, a fairly small role, but you can kind of get used to having people do other things for you. Obviously, at some point, as you take the tool belt off, you're going to have somebody else in the field overseeing your projects. That's really critical. You're in the office, you're doing sales, you're close to the phone. You can hang on to the project management role far better than you can hang on to the field supervision role as you're growing and building your company. But as you're growing and building, that next step has got to be to fill that project management role and have somebody else start interacting with the subs, the clients, overseeing the money and overseeing the material ordering and the progress of the work. So it's a critical step. And like I said, when I was doing commercial, and I work with a very large contractor, right now we're upgrading some of his operating systems. They've got 4 offices, so they probably have 20 or 25, I'm guessing, full-time project managers running projects all over New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut. They'll run 2 projects at a time, unless they're super large projects. And that's their job all day long. They sit at a desk all day long. They like a really fun day for them is when they get to go to the field. It's a very rare occurrence. Maybe once a week they get out to the job site and see what's actually going on. Other than that, they're sitting behind a computer, they're hanging on the phone, they're writing contracts all day long. That's what they do. The owner of the company, he's got an estimating team. His focus all day long is that one-on-one interaction with the client. These are multi-million-dollar jobs. So he still gets involved in sales from that, sit at the conference table, get everybody comfortable and sign them up. And then once they're signed up, he hands it off to a project team. He's got field superintendents, project managers, residential contractor. But he is not involved in these projects at all anymore. He's got teams of people that do that. The commercial world works that way. And as you're growing, it is the only way that you're going to grow. Because eventually, I mean, you can imagine this guy in Connecticut. There is no way he could run all these jobs. He can't even get to all of his jobs to even know what's going on. He has to rely on people and systems and processes to keep him up to speed in case the client calls one day. And he can log in, look at some photos, check out some reports, and know what's going on that project before he picks up that phone with the client. It's all done by computers and paper at that point. And the company is just too large for him to manage himself on a day-to-day basis. Not that you ever want to get to that point in your business, and maybe you do, but it's a growth stage. And it's a role that you really need to consider as you're growing your business, because it's that real big opportunity where you can walk away and go on vacation, because now your site superintendent and your project manager are going to run the jobs. The work is still going to get put in place. Subcontractors are still going to get paid. Client invoices are still going to go out. Money is still going to drop in your account while you're sitting on the beach. That is a really fun feeling. And that's when you know that you've got a business that is now an asset. You're not required every day to be there. Okay, that's my spiel. I'm going to stop. So my next step always is to see if anybody's got comments, questions, thoughts, whatever. I know, Rich, you're contemplating this role. Danny, you're working towards that as well. So I'd like to know questions. What are your thoughts on that? Where do you think I went wrong?
I think you hit it on the head, Dwayne. It's interesting. Mine and your background is a whole lot alike, so I've seen it operate in the commercial world. Where the owners of companies are not involved. Everything's run through basically employees, which are project managers, superintendents, project teams, estimators.
Right.
As I told you, I think the last meeting we hired a guy to be a project manager for us. And sadly, last week it ate his lunch. He's like, I can't do it. And you don't realize, and I wish that I had this a little more of a hey, here's my expectations or the expectations of you. We discussed a whole lot about what his role would be and how he had to do it. But, he come to me and he's like, man, I've had to start taking anxiety medicine and this, that, and the other. And you have a client that's just a little bit aggravating, I guess you could say, not over the top for sure, but, just a little bit needy, I guess you could say.
Right.
And he was a great guy. Personality wise, he's a great guy, good man. He's a real people pleaser, and sadly, the pleasing the client versus pleasing the budget to him, he just couldn't get through that. You know what I mean? And
I
he'd
know
be
what you
like,
mean.
well, we need to do this. And I'm like, well, they have to pay for it if that's what they want. You know, they want to make changes, they have to pay for them. That's fair. And he struggled with that. So I'll be honest with you, having this definition or having this sheet to sit down with the next, and I don't know when that'll be, but with the next person, because, you know, again, having the same background, I can run 4 or 5 jobs in my head nearly, you know,
Right.
and make my phone calls as I'm traveling around during the day and take care of a lot of the office stuff too. And I will say, he took a good bit of load off of me for a little while, you know. And then after he got here and it started eating on him, I began having to prompt him, have you done this? Have you done that? You know, and that type of thing. So I will say, Rich, if you're looking to hire one, I think you told me here the other day when we were talking, you were maybe getting to that place. Make sure that the expectations, they know what they are. And that, you know, this guy is capable is a thing. I mean, he was a drafts person. He's drawn many jobs for me. And I thought, well, I can combine this together and this will be a cool deal. But his personality just couldn't handle it, you know.
But it's funny you say that, Dad, because actually for me it worked out in the direct opposite.
Yeah.
I was the one as the business owner that was more likely to collapse when, because I you know, I wanted to make the client happy. You know, so I would be the one that would probably fold faster than my project manager. My project manager, to her, it was just a job. It was like,
Yeah.
you want an upgrade, you're gonna have to pay for it. Like, you know, you're not walking out of the grocery store with that pack of meat without paying for it. It was just that simple to her.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were just facts to her. So
Yeah.
she was able to address it in a different way that so a lot of times I actually liked her, like, go tell him it's going to cost more. She go, no problem.
Yeah.
And she'd come back with a signed change order. Done. Where I might have folded, or I might have said, I'll tell you what, I'll do it for half. I'll split it with you.
Yeah.
So from my standpoint, it worked out better because I was the one that was more likely to fold.
Yeah.
I not that I'm a people pleaser, but you're always balancing that. You know, you want the good client, you want the good reviews, you want all
Oh,
that stuff, you want them to be happy. Whereas to her, it was just a matter of fact. She treated it a lot more as factual than I did, and I appreciated that because that took a lot of pressure off of me.
yeah.
But it is one of those challenges. And having that job description, it does help. I mean, and you should, like, it's generic.
Mm.
It's a good starting point. I'd go through it yourself. You know, you're using JobTread, so there's a lot of things in there that you may want to tweak that specifically apply to how you handle JobTread. And how that relates to your accounting and where your subcontracts are located and how you do some of that operational stuff. But just take that document and tweak it a little bit. You know, wipe out the lines that don't apply, add a few lines that, you know, that you feel would clarify the role.
I'll be honest with you. If I'd have had that document and handed it to him in the hiring process instead of just verbally doing that, he probably would have come in with he probably would have come to work. If he had come to work, he may have figured out beforehand that this is over my head. But if not, he would have come in to work with a whole lot better understanding of what was expected of him, you know?
Right.
So the job description, no doubt, would help.
So I've got one for a field superintendent too, which I was going to talk about in a couple of weeks. So, but if you need one in the interim for the field, I have one of those. So just
I think you've
drop me a
shared
note.
those with me before, but I don't know if it's the AI updated or not.
So yeah, no,
I'm gonna hush and let somebody else talk.
Okay. So Rich, you have any thoughts on all of that? I see you taking notes and you look pensive.
Yeah, this is probably the position that's the most daunting for me to fully like get a grasp on too. And it's probably just because we don't have a lot of the little systems and processes like really down. It's kind of, I'm going with the flow on every job, you know, whatever needs to get done, just do it type of thing. And even the logistics of just them with the company, where do they work? Are they are they working from home, or are they working, do I give them an office, like all these different things. But it's really the most daunting. Like I understand the carpenters, the field help, that sort of thing. I understand that site super role because that's the position my father's in now, and he's kind of doing his thing out there. I guess the just getting comfortable of taking half the things off my plate, giving them to somebody else, and developing that. I obviously see the value in it. It's a huge value, but it does seem like a big time commitment. And even knowing like when you hire that person, what do you like, what are we looking? Am I looking for someone that's very experienced in this role already? Or is it someone that's maybe not as familiar with the construction industry and I'm helping them along the way, or, where it is in that process or that type of person? I don't know.
It's a really good question. And this is, especially in the residential world, Danny's done the larger commercial. I've done the larger commercial. There are professional project managers in the commercial world. This is what they do for a living. They're really good at what they do. It's a role. It's a job. You hire for it. You interview for it. It doesn't exist that much in residential. Finding residential project managers is challenging. It's not.
Residential is more complex than commercial because you're dealing directly with a client, and in commercial, the client is normally dealing, even in design build, they're dealing with a GC and an architect and engineers that are all helping solve those problems. And in a residential world, you're it. So,
You're it.
yeah, the unexperienced person, I'd say, Rich, save you some trouble. Be very careful if you hired somebody that was really unexperienced and didn't have some type of project management skill. Maybe not be construction project management, but some type of organizational project management skills versus somebody that you're going to train, because they'll take all your time.
Right. No, I
No
think
doubt.
you're right. And I've had the challenge before where I've had people who are very, very skilled in project management and may not know construction, or at least residential construction, as well as the rest of us who have lived it. And I really had to coach them through getting comfortable with asking questions. Like, you don't have to know everything. You're not going to know everything. Even in my day-to-day experience in the industry, I'm surprised and go, well, I thought I've seen everything. And now look at that. I've never seen that 30 plus years. And it surprised me again. It's okay not to know everything. Don't be afraid to ask the field. And then I had to coach the field through it and go, look, you're going to get a bunch of questions. Show your expertise. Join in. Help the team. They're trying to help you build the project. They're here to help you sign up subs, make sure they get paid, make sure everything, materials are delivered on time. They're here to help you. So help them. If they don't know all the details of, what all of our acronyms mean, what is an LSL? What is a PSL? What is all this stuff that, just flows through our heads? That was one of my biggest coaching challenges with both the field and the office. Where I had, finding somebody who's really good, who knows construction and is willing to sit behind a computer all day doing things like contracts is challenging in residential. I haven't found a lot of people that do it. I've also found a lot of businesses who try to split the role. Half the time in the field, half the time in the office. And I've never seen that work either. Because the guys that like the field. And they do a terrible job in the office, or they're so busy in the field they never come into the office to get the stuff done. It just doesn't happen because they're not paper people, for lack of a better term. I mean, if you've dealt in any kind of role in that way, trying to get a field superintendent to do a daily field report is challenging enough. They don't like filling out those reports or even time cards, let alone start sitting down and writing a scope of work in a subcontract. Like it just doesn't happen. They don't enjoy it. They don't do it. A good PM, it's just their job. It's one more subcontract. They pull out the form. They do the scope of work. They write up the dollars, send it out for signature, put it in the file. Done. It's what I do. So it is a challenge, Rich. You're right. It's finding that specific person. You've got to be, you're right in the fact that you say, you know, you need systems in place. You need to have some routine in place of how you get things done, whether that's going to be, I know you're switching to JobTread. Danny would love to talk to you about that because he loves JobTread. He's got a side job of selling JobTread, I think. But once you get that set up, then writing down those processes within JobTread of how you write subcontracts, how you review vendor invoices, so that PM can know that information. If you have all that written down, the PM doesn't need to be sitting in your office next to you with a desk and an office space and a phone. This can be done on a laptop and a cell phone and a good printer. Because you're going to have everything electronic. You know, your accounting is electronic. JobTread's going to be, you know, online kind of a thing. Everything's on the cloud. They can get to everything they need to get to. They don't need to commute in. You don't need to give, and from a cost of providing them a desk and an office space, you can buy them a brand new computer every single year and a brand new printer, and you're still going to be way far ahead as far as an overhead cost. But you also have to have those steps in place for yourself, so you can verify what they're doing.
Yeah.
Because they're not going to be sitting next to you. You're not going to yell over your shoulder and, hey, did you call Bob? We need to start that plumbing there on Tuesday. They're not going to be there. So you need a trust but verify system if you're going to have them remote. And that was one of the reasons I did the weekly, and it turned into a Zoom call. So we didn't even meet once a week. We did a Zoom call once a week to go over the projects. But we did a Zoom call. We did a one-on-one, and I had a sheet. She filled out all the blanks, and then we went over it. And like I said, it was my way of temperature checking, issue checking, staying in touch with the project without being involved in the project. So we got Victor listening in. Victor, did you catch all that? Do you have any thoughts? See if we can get him to come off mute.
Hiding.
He's hiding. Yeah, he's out in
Hiding.
California on his iPhone. He wanted to jump in, so he's not going to join in.
I don't know if I got the updated document that you sent over. You have to send that later or whatnot. But
oh no, you probably didn't because you're on the calendar. I know why you didn't. I didn't think of that.
But even like the role with, you know, writing their subcontract agreements and those sort of things. Now, is that a lot of that's also brought over into the actual construction agreement for the project? Now, are they helping to write that on the sale? Like, even with the sales, like the overlap between sales and estimating and the project manager, you know, even how involved are they in that process?
Again, it depends on how the company is structured. In general, the project manager is not involved in the sales side at all. They really don't get to know anything about the job until it's under contract. In the commercial world, that's typically how it's done. I mean, you might have an idea that there's a job coming out there, but one day somebody shows up and you know there's a new job coming because you're kind of wrapping up one of your old jobs. So you know somebody's going to come stand at your desk and go, you know, you're going to be starting this in 2 weeks. And that's what you get. You get a set of drawings, a contract, set of specifications, and say, go build it.
Yeah.
You're not involved on the sales side at all. But they've done all of that as far as organizing to hand it off to the field team. And there's probably a meeting in the middle. It's good to have a meeting. Part of that is going to be to transition some of that, you know, like Danny said, it's got a challenging customer out there. Not bad, but that's good for the project manager to know. You know, you're going to have to be a little patient with this one. There's going to be some hand holding. Oh, and by the way, they were really concerned about whatever that may be, you know, the front lawn. Like that, for whatever reason, they mentioned that like 1,000 times. Okay, as a PM, they need to know that. That's not going to be in the contract anywhere.
Yeah.
None of that's going to be written down. So you kind of need that transition temperature check between sales and operations. But other than that, sales should step away, operations should take over, and you as the owner are kind of watching this entire flow. Involved in the sales, then involved in the production, but you're not building it, you're not selling it at some point.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about kind of like my process, how I go through and with pricing projects, with getting fixed pricing on projects. And I'm kind of, writing up a scope of work for our subs to send them that out to kind of price it. And then once I get that back, it's all getting piled into that construction agreement and then sent out to the client to sign to move that into an actual project. So I don't know, I just see some sort of overlap or whatnot between that subcontract agreement, that scope of work, and all that between, what I'm doing for the sales to get the proposal ready for them to sign and them having the scope of work to send off to the subcontractors for their own agreement.
Right. And based on what you're saying, you do have an overlap. When I was doing large commercial, and I don't, Danny might be able to weigh in on this. The way we handled it was the project management team didn't buy any subs. Sales and the estimating team handed us the job and our subcontractors because, as you said, they already had the scopes in place. So while they were putting the package together, they just bought out all the subs. Like the only thing I was allowed to buy as the PM was something silly like, maybe the entry sign, maybe the flag pole, maybe the sisal mat at the front door. I think I got to buy toilet partitions once. Like, other than that, they bought out all the big stuff. And so they handed me subcontractors, they handed me drawings, specifications, a job site, they assigned a superintendent, and then I just managed everybody. I got submittals done. I got whatever was required in the contract. I didn't even have to buy any subs. And you could do it that way as well. There's a lot of guys in the residential world who have the project management team buy the subs. Partly because in residential, it changes so much. And a lot of times the guys will buy it out as they get closer to that trade. Because technically you could, if you had a full scope of work, you're doing a basement job, for example, you could buy that. You could buy the paint on day one when you're doing demo. You've got it scoped up, the square footage, but a lot of times we wait. We don't have paint colors yet. The owner's still trying to decide on tile. Maybe they want some wallpaper. We don't have all the information. Now, we could buy the paint and then change order in all the rest of it, which is typically what it's done in commercial world. It's bought up front. And you can do it either way. And part of that's deciding how you want to run your company, who you want responsible for that role. Now, your PM can probably run a lot more jobs if they don't have to buy subs, but they may have more change orders to deal with when the owner decides they want wallpaper.
So the company I worked for worked a little more like residential. They were a completely design build firm. And actually from the start, usually maybe the job had already been sold, but as soon as it went into the planning stage, the architect and the project manager, most of the time a representative of the owner of the company, there was 2 or 3 of them. And even at times on some of the jobs that I did, the superintendent was involved in the initial meeting, somewhat like you would with a residential client. So
But
that everybody,
part of the
everybody
design
understood.
process, Danny?
Yeah, that was part of the design process.
Okay.
Now maybe they had already had schematics and a rough estimate in place, you know what I mean? But the budget hadn't been completely developed. The job hadn't been completely developed, and that initial team visit, it's a lot different in residential, but again, the project manager, the superintendent, the architect, at least the civil engineer, and one of the owner reps from whoever we were working for, plus one of the owner reps for the company would be in that meeting, so that any communication, but you made a good point a while ago. There may be something in there that a job superintendent could add a lot of value in, you know what I mean? You can't do that in the residential world. I will say this guy that was working for me, my first run with a project manager now, but I was still doing the sales type meetings. Okay. I was meeting the client the first time we sat down, but I had him there with me, and we developed the estimate together. Okay. So he was estimating, and that way he sort of developing the scope of work from what he heard and what we heard versus from what I tell him, you know what I mean? So I took that as the best way to get started, is, hey, I'm gonna get him involved on the front end of this thing. Not all sales, but most sales, you know, new homes. Right or wrong, I'm not sure, but it seems, you know, it seems like to me, when you start looking again at that project manager role for residential compared to commercial, it's you have to have somebody that's sort of takes on a, hey, I own this project role, you know what I mean? Versus somebody handed me a job. That's how I see it in residential anyway. So
Yeah,
I
there's a
prefer
lot
to
of
involve them.
relationship in the
Yeah,
residential
yeah.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's probably what we all know that. I mean, that's the big difference between residential and commercial is the relationship and the amount of information that we have. Commercial, they're going to tell you what type of screws go into the toilet partitions. It's going to be spelled out in the specs. We don't have all that information in residential. We don't have half that information. You know, we kind of know they want a new kitchen when we first get the phone call. All the rest of it has to be developed. So it is a very relationship driven process, which changes the role a bit from the commercial to residential. But at some point, it is the only way to grow. Because just like you can only spend so many hours in the field and try to get the rest of your business running, you can only run so many jobs as the owner of the company before your head explodes. You're just like, I can't take one more phone call. I can't deal with one more issue. And then that'll limit the growth of the company. It also, from a standpoint of selling the business or handing it off to kids or whatever you want to do, or just going on vacation, having that person there adds so much value, and defining that role adds so much value to the business. If you wanted to sell this business and you had a defined project management role that people were doing, and the new owner could step in and the jobs just continued on, is a huge value to the business, because most people buying a business or stepping into that role may not have those skills or may not want to learn them. Like I just wanted to own a construction company. I didn't want to go pick out tile. So it starts to add a lot of value in creating a business as an asset, as opposed to the business as a job. And it is part of the reason I liked the part-time role was it gave me a little bit of a chance to transition again. I was a PM. I've had PMs in the past. I hadn't for a while. So kind of getting my head wrapped around to letting go, having it as a part-time helped me transition. And I also saved on expenses of a full-time role and all the benefits and the salary. I brought him out as a 1099 contractor, so I just paid him by the job or whatever my agreement was. So it saved me some of the employee headaches as well as that continued on. I did put, I don't know if you can see it, Rich. I put the, and I can send it to you in an email too, but I put a link where I put that project management job description in the comments.
Yeah, I just downloaded that.
Okay.
So I'll take a look through that. But yeah, no, I see obviously see a huge value in that role. And even during the pre-construction process for larger type projects, because like during that pre-construction, you can start develop as the design develops, you can start developing those contractor agreements and the scope of work and all that stuff and get answers from the architect and interior designer or whoever's on the project. So even after you sell that pre-construction agreement, they can start getting involved.
Right. And your
helps with the
project manager
familiar-
might be part of that pre-construction team. It just depends on how you want to structure it.
Yeah,
Ultimately becomes a factor of time.
yeah,
You know, like where Danny was saying, you know, it's great to have the field superintendent in on these meetings from a design standpoint and get their input. I totally agree. It's just as you're running, if that same superintendent's running a project, they don't always have the time to be, you know, heading in and going to a meeting in an office.
yeah.
They got so much
Yeah,
going on a job site, they can't split away.
Yeah, I need to clarify. Most of those were 15 to $25 million jobs, so they can afford that a lot better, you know, than your $200,000 remodel somewhere or something. Rich, I will say one thing because I just have went through this process, and taking that step to hire somebody is hard. It's a hard, big step for a business owner, okay? Because you do have to turn loose. And I'll say probably the part that bothered me the worst is I'm a lot more efficient than the guy that I hired. I don't know if that'll always be the case. You know, I hope not, but I'm a lot more efficient than the guy that I hired, and I paid him pretty good money. And when I looked at the value I was getting, it just wasn't working, you know. And he left because he had a lot of pressure on him. And I'm not going to lie to you, some of that pressure was applied by me because I had high expectations, you know. And if you look at this job description, it's a pretty high expectation job, you know. So I'm just gonna say that when you start looking at it, you know, I gave the guy, I told him when he come, you know, I'm gonna give you 3 months, and we're just gonna let you get up to speed. And I sort of realized that, you know, you're not gonna put a lot of value here because you got to learn who we are and what we are and how we do. Then I expect you to start taking on some of them roles. And my goal was within the first year to have him so that 50% of his time was billable. Okay. At least 50% of his time was billable. It's a tough place. I'm just going to tell you, it's a tough hire. When I do it again, the guy that I hire will be a lot different than the last guy I hired, and he'll be interviewed a lot more better. Even though I interviewed this guy a lot, I mean, he, you know, and the expectations will be a lot higher.
Yeah, obviously going through that with the other project manager, and going through it once, you learn the right questions to ask on the next one and this and that and really how to get in their mind and how they work and all that stuff too. So no, I could see that.
And I think probably for me, part of the other thing that I realized on it, and I think Danny pointed out a little bit there, is they're going to make mistakes. They're never going to work as hard as we do. It's our business. So, you know, if you can get 70 to 80% efficiency out of them compared to ourselves, that's probably pretty good. And we need to have that realization going in. You know, every time, oh, give 110%. It's not their business. They're not going to give 110%. You know, it's just not going to happen. Why would they? And they're going to make mistakes. And we're the ones that end up having to pay for them as well. It's going to happen. And that's a reality that we have to accept. But the flip side of it is if they can give you 70%, but they can do 2 jobs, and you can work on sales, you're getting 140% out of them in a really weird math scenario, but you're getting 70% of their effort, 70% of their results but now they're running 2 projects, or maybe they're running 3 projects. But from a standpoint of our personal lives, we can't run the business, oversee the field, go to all the sales calls, and run 3 projects. So their 70% is a lot, is freeing us up from a standpoint of giving us, 200% output, because they're freeing up all that time. We're buying a lot of time is what we're buying.
Yeah, the 30% of time that we were able to put it into sales, now we can jump that up to the 60, 70% or something like that. So yeah, it does
Right.
have ripple effect. Even the mistakes thing. I make mistakes, it seems like all the time, because I'm spread too thin. Like I forget about this, or I forget this is coming up, or it's like just the little stupid shit that happens. So yeah, mistakes are gonna happen either way, no matter who does them. It's just
Right.
they
And
can
you
fix
think,
their own mistakes and you don't have to deal with it. Like
right. And you think about the reverse side of that too is, if a project manager, they didn't have to worry about sales or payroll or HR, or if all they had to do was focus on the job and get materials ordered, then the odds of catching some of those missed items is going to be reduced.
yeah.
But you're going to have the time when they misorder a window, and you've got an odd sized window, or it's a door that's got the wrong handing on it because somebody missed something. It's going to suck. You're like, what do I do now? You're like, well, I guess I own a door. Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
And for me, I had to look back on it and go, have I ever misordered a door? Have I ever picked it up with the wrong hand? I'm like, yeah, I've done it. I guess somebody else could do it too. I really had to look at myself and go, okay, I've screwed this up myself, and give them a little bit of a buy. Now you can't, you got to put your thumb down. Like, these mistakes don't happen. And especially now with lead time on windows, I would recommend that everybody in the company checks a window schedule before the order goes out, because you can't afford for it to be wrong.
Those
You
are
a
can't
good
wait another 8
example.
weeks for the replacement to come in. Like, it's a job killer. So
I'll tell
everybody
you-
gets to review the window schedule and sign off.
I'll tell you a benefit that this guy had to me. Yesterday, I had windows delivered to a job. The grid pattern was 4/1 on the grid. Well, the owner came by the job. I wasn't there. The framers were there. The owner came by the job. She texted me and said, the grid pattern's wrong in the windows. They were supposed to be 6/1. And I'm like, okay, I need to get with Brad and talk to him first. And she's like, well, I'm telling you, I've talked to him 2 or 3 times. Well, he came up with a text from her that said, I want the grid patterns to be 4/1, which saved me having to reorder a whole house full of windows.
Oof.
And I'll be honest with you, had it been me, it would have probably been a verbal conversation. Okay. And I would have probably been buying another house full of windows. So there is some benefit from them mistakes that you're talking about sometimes, that you got somebody there and they're just pushing paper, because I know if you're like me, a lot of the stuff you do may be somewhat verbal, so
Yeah, a lot of it's seat of the
there's a
pants.
benefit
You're
to
on the
it, yeah.
cell phone in the truck.
Yeah.
Yep.
Listen, guys, we got to get. I enjoyed it. Thank you,
Top of the
Dwayne. This
hour.
has been
Thanks
a
for
good
everybody
one.
coming. I appreciate it.
right.
If you got any questions, reach out.
All right. Thank you, man.
Okay, very good.
Bye.
Right.
I'm gonna hang here for a second because Damien's checking in.
All right. Thank you.
I'm here.
Hey, Damien.
Hey, Dwayne, thank you.
Yeah. We're just wrapping up. You're on the back end of the hour instead of the front end of the hour, Damien.
You're in a different time zone than I am.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
Not a problem.
No worries.
I saw you didn't make it. I was looking forward to having you there. I'll send you a copy of our conversation. It was a really good conversation.
Awesome.
I'll shoot that over to you, and then we'll catch up on the right time zone next time.
All right. Sounds great.
Okay. Thank
Thanks,
you.
buddy.
Yep.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye.